Hello, good morning. My name is Amy Brisgill. I am a professor of film and visual culture in the School of Language, Literature, Music, and Visual Culture. And I am so pleased to welcome everyone to our careers event, Sector Insights. I know we have a lot of people coming today, which is absolutely excellent. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to introduce Rona Gibson, who is our careers advisor for LLMVC. So over to you, Rona.
Hi, welcome everybody. Yeah, I'm the Careers Advisor for LLMVC, and I'm also accompanied today by my colleague Julia Lang, who's been supporting the organisation. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Rona. So our first speaker, our first guest is David Strachan. He's actually a graduate of the University of Aberdeen, and a few years ago he was honoured, quite rightly, with an honorary doctorate. It was my pleasure to actually introduce him for that, and that's how we met. And I'm so happy to have him here. He is the founding manager and director of Tern Television, which is located in Aberdeen. And one of the things that really struck me when I met David was his desire to keep television and broadcasting in Aberdeen as opposed to moving it to Glasgow, Edinburgh, or London. So I'm not going to say anything more other than that I'm so happy to have David here. We're going to go over to him. I know he's actually working today on a recording event or an editing event, so he will have to go. That's why he's going first. So, but if you do have questions for him, please put them in the chat, and I'm just going to stop sharing this screen now so that we can see David when he's speaking to us. So over to you, David. Thank you so much.
Hello, Amy, and thank you very much for the invitation today. I'm not sure how well we've succeeded in keeping production in Aberdeen. That's still an ongoing battle, but I think given the comparison with the last few years, the prospects for young people coming into television and film are brighter now in Scotland than they have been for a very long time. In the television side, I don't know if you've read recently that Tim Davie, the new Director General, has made a central plank of his new regime in the BBC that they're going to increase further the percentage of production that happens outside of London to 60%. Now, when I started banging on doors and making a noise, 95% of it was being done in London. So you realise what a significant change that is to get that happening, and it means that I mean, here I am. I'm actually in BBC in Glasgow at the moment, and we've had a real struggle to get resources here because there's a game show being recorded. There's where Scotland used to be just a sort of bunch of documentary makers, we now make long-term series, which means that the contracts that you get last for longer. It's a very insecure business, television, but if you could get a contract for something that's longer than a single 30-minute documentary, then you're going to be in work for a bit longer and you have to spend less time looking for more work. The whole kind of quiz and game show thing is building up. I'm also chair of Screen Scotland, and we have just seen an investment of 7 million quid in a new studio in Glasgow where there's going to be entertainment and game shows done. So whether you want to work in factual or entertainment, the opportunities are certainly coming. Also, aside from the public service broadcasters whose work opportunities are going down because the viewership is going down and their funding is going down, that's because people your generation are mostly not watching public service broadcasters, so it's your fault. No, I'm joking. But there are compensations to be had because Netflix, Amazon, and so on are queuing up to make stuff here. We have some very distinguished Scottish producers who are insisting that stuff gets done here. There's a new studio which has opened in Leith. There's this new studio opening in Glasgow. There are several other studios around the country at the Pyramids on the M8 and in Cumbernauld, and some very high-profile series are being made. Back to the entertainment thing, I'm sure everybody's a fan of The Masked Singer. Not me, but lots of people are. But it's made by a Scottish production company. So, you know, that's the level at which things are happening, considering 30 years ago, you'd be lucky if you got a half-hour documentary. So I just want to give you a positive message. It is an insecure business, but there are going to be opportunities everywhere from the technical side, research and camera and sound and directing to production management and producing and all the rest of it. So good luck.
Thank you so much, David. If you had one piece of advice to give to students who are in their studies now or graduating soon, what would it be?
This is a difficult thing to do, but it's have confidence in yourself and in your judgment and in your instincts. There's a delicate balance in telly between bullshitters who want to tell you how good they are at stuff that they really don't know about, and people who are sitting there thinking, do you know, I'm not sure about that. I think that should be, you know, a telly works best when there's a good positive atmosphere and everybody's voice is heard and there's collaborative input. So have confidence in your voice and have confidence in your instincts, because that's what people need.
Thank you so much, David. I would absolutely agree with that, and it's nice to hear someone else saying that. Does anyone have a question for David? Because as I've said in the chat, we'll have to be going, and I don't want to keep him. He's editing today. Rona has posted Screen Scotland in the chat. Any questions for David about the TV industry, about anything? A question from Rosie. Where do you think is a good place to look for TV jobs?
Hi, Rosie. A lot of it's about relationships. You know, you get your first. You just have to bang and bang and bang on doors, and you get, you know, some crappy job making the coffee as a runner and you think it's crappy, but you know that's where you see not only the technical side of it, but how the interactions work, and you will learn the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. There are some bad guys in telly. There is some, you know, it can be a really lovely positive thing, but it can be quite negative, and people can be, you know, because it's insecure, people can who are insecure themselves can crawl on top of other people in order to get on. The best place to look for jobs, there is a Facebook website in Scotland which you can only get onto by recommendation from a production company. So you know, that's the kind of certification that you've got experience. I would talk to the research centre, TRC in Glasgow. They are pretty well connected. If you know somebody in telly, use that contact and ask them. That's probably the best thing. Just make contacts, find out, ask if you can come along and just do a bit of work experience somewhere. Don't put up with being unpaid for a long period of time, but you know, a short period of observation means you get to know people and get known.
Thanks so much, David. I absolutely agree. I think that I agree with that statement of it's fine to be unpaid for a short time. I think that can be very useful, not to let it go on too long. But in the beginning of any career, you're going to have to put up with doing the grunt work. We've all done it. So thank you for saying that. Yeah. Any other questions for David? I think if I don't want to keep you, David. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share, if you have to go, because the next person we were going to be hearing from is Jess, who has worked with you at Tern TV.
Yeah, she's fantastic, and she's done really well, and she's got, you know, started in Aberdeen, and here she is progressing her career in London.
And exactly, it's such a wonderful success story. And thank you so much for giving these opportunities to our students. For those who don't know, we have a work placement agreement with Tern TV on the Film and Visual Culture program, and we've placed some of our students with Tern TV, and it's been, I hope it's been a productive relationship.
It has. Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to stay and listen to Jess.
Great, excellent. So thank you so much, David. If there are still questions for David and he's around, you can type them in the chat. But now I'm going to introduce Jess Robinson, who is the executive assistant at Sacha Baron Cohen's and Andrew Newman's TV production company, Spellthorne Community TV. And as I said, I first encountered Jess when she was a film and visual culture postgraduate top student, MLIT student in our school. And now she's gone on to bigger and better and wonderful things. So over to you, Jess. Thank you for coming.
Hello, hi everyone. Yeah, no pressure then, David, with you listening now. And yeah, you're all bigging me up, saying I'm fantastic. I'm not really. But yeah, so it was thanks to David and Tern that I got into TV, and that was my stepping stone into it. And otherwise, I wouldn't know, wouldn't have known it even sort of existed really. And so I'll start from the beginning. Basically, you can tell from my very funny voice that I'm originally from Yorkshire. So I was born and bred in Yorkshire, had quite a sort of a sheltered background, didn't know much about, big television production companies and all that sort of thing. And then I went to Newcastle University for my undergrad, did English literature and creative writing there. Had no idea I wanted to get into telly. And then I moved to Scotland because of my partner, and I did your master's, Amy, which was I just thought, oh, that sounds fun, sounds great. Hadn't even looked into that it had a work-based placement or anything like that. And then Amy said, well, there is this opportunity, and she said, we've got this company, Tern. And I remember I came into Tern with my friend and met David and had a chat, and he basically said, yeah, we'll take you on, to do a bit of work experience. And that, for me, that was the start of my career. And and thank goodness for that opportunity, because as I say, otherwise I wouldn't have got into telly and I wouldn't have known what it was. So I sort of just fell into that opportunity, thank goodness. Worked as a archive researcher and a runner for Tern on Beechgrove Garden, which I'm sure everybody knows of Beechgrove Garden, living in Scotland. And that was great because I got experience of being on set and running about and and David, you said it's a crappy job running about making coffee. I loved it. It was fantastic, helping out and being there and seeing all the action, but not having the sort of responsibility of telling people where to go and what to do. It was great. I felt a bit naughty, like I was backstage and I was sort of peeping in on what was going on. I was allowed to be there. So no, I felt very privileged to be able to do that. And I was, also an archive researcher, so I was working in the office as well, doing a bit of paperwork and looking through old Beechgrove tapes, that was really fun, really good. And after that, I worked for Tern again as a production coordinator on the Children's Hospital, which is on BBC Scotland. And I think that's actually just been, it's had 2 series now, and it's doing really well. So that was for me, I was just sort of thrown into the deep end with that because I didn't really know what a coordinator's job was, but sort of the people who interviewed me said, well, you seem very organized, sort of your mindset's like that. So I just sort of did it. I took a leap and did it, and everybody was really helpful. It's great having a good team around you and good people who work in telly. And you just must ask questions, because there was certain times where I thought I have no idea what I'm doing, but if you ask people, they'll generally help you out. And also I couldn't believe that sort of job I could actually be paid for that, because I do that in my general day-to-day life. I am sort of my own coordinator in that I write lists all the time. I'm thinking, right, what am I doing next, planning my day and stuff. And I couldn't believe that this job actually existed and that I would actually be paid for it. So that was fantastic. And that was great for me to get to grips with, the different roles in telly, and I was there for the whole production. So it was pre and post. And so I sort of got the whole, the whole way through the production. So that was really good. Then David again, he's very handy, is David, to have on hand. He recommended me for a production coordinator role for a company who contacted him, they were from Abu Dhabi. And so I was another production coordinator for them, and they basically just needed somebody who knew the area and knew Aberdeen and could get crew and that sort of thing and had good contacts. So that was another good thing to put on my CV, thanks to David again. Then for me personally, TV sort of dried up a little bit. But I was sort of thinking as well that I'm definitely going to be moving to London. Me and my partner knew that we weren't going to stay in Aberdeen, sadly. So I was sort of thinking about that as well, thinking about I need to make money now and work on finding a job in London, really. So I did I was working at a law firm actually as a receptionist. And then I got some work experience at Brook Lapping, which again was through somebody who worked for David, their head of development, Andrew. He said, well, I know this lady she works in development in London. Do you want to go through for, and thankfully, you know, it is, a lot of these things is just luck. It's luck and it's who you know. So I went and stayed with my cousin who luckily lives in London, did a week's work experience in development, then realised that I really wasn't into development and that I was absolutely useless. And so I said while I was there, you know, you just need to ask, can I do a bit of coordinating? You know, I've done it before, I really enjoy it. I want to get into your company, see how it works. They said, yeah, this production needs Buried Secrets of World War II, needs a bit of help. So I did a few days with them, and then they said, well, we'd like to keep you on because the production manager's going on holiday and it'd be great if you could help the co-ord out. So that was another, just a lucky opportunity just from asking a question, you know, can I help? And then in the meantime, then I came back to Aberdeen, carried on working. And you're saying about finding jobs and things. So one of the really useful tools I've found is Facebook, in that any page that I could just write myself, you know, present myself and say, this is what I can do, this is what I've done, I'm willing to do this, this and that, you know, please act a bit desperate, please give me anything, you know, I really want to learn, all that sort of thing. And I got a private message from a diary coordinating company called Linkline, and they said, right, we want to take you on for 3 months. Come and meet us. If we like you, we'll take you on for 3 months, work at our company while we go on holiday. And so that was a really good job. And I've been sort of off and on with them, freelance work. But that, again, it was just luck, and it was knowing where to present yourself and that sort of thing. And then I was offered another post-production coordinator role at Boundless on, I don't know, people might know it, BBC's Love in the Countryside. And that was just a short job, but you know, that's the thing with telly, as you'll know, David, it's so bitty, and it is so, you know, it can be, and they'll say, right, we want to take you on for 2 weeks, and it ends up being 3 months, or, you know, it's, and you won't have anything, it'll dry up for a bit, and you don't have anything for a while, and then suddenly something comes along again, which was what this was. And to be honest, that was my first sort of proper TV job in London, and it was really scary. It was very scary, and I made so many mistakes, and I think back now and I just cringe and wince, and I think, I can't believe that I actually did that, and that, I thought that would work. And pretending, I was pretending that I was clever and that I knew everything, and you know, I can work in London, and I fell flat on my face a couple of times, and was really embarrassed. And so that is, again, it's just being willing to ask questions. You know, you've got to ask for help when you need it, and not let the pressure get to you, and believe in yourself. And then I had a bit of a dry patch where I didn't have anything, and I didn't dare go back to that company because I thought, well, I haven't, you know, made a good first impression really, so I'm not going to get anywhere with you. And then I had a few months with no job, but because these roles are generally quite well paid, you can sort of get by usually. But it is a bit worrying. And then I was offered actually 3 jobs on the same day. I got 3 different phone calls saying, can you do this, can you do that? And then you just think, oh, I've hit the jackpot. And I could actually fit them all in so that I would have, I think it was a month with literally no weekends. So I was working full time. Because I just said yes to all these, and that's the other thing, you've got to say yes no matter what. That's something that David taught me actually, which I remember he offered me another job when I was back in Aberdeen for, I think it was working on a political show or something, and I just said to it, I wasn't brave enough, and I said, I can't do it because I don't know about politics, I can't do it. And he said, yeah, you can, come on, help me out, you can do it. And I said, no, I can't, I'm afraid I'll mess up. But you know, everybody messes up, and it's, you need to just go for it, no matter what it is, you know, just get the experience, get the thing on your CV. And so, yeah, then I was a production assistant for World of Wonder on RuPaul's Drag Race, which that was really exciting and really fun. Something totally different from, you know, Beach Grove Garden back in the Aberdeen days. And I did a junket, which is like sort of, it was a junket, yeah, for Just Mercy, which was a film, and I was sort of an AP really on that, which that was really, really good fun. And that was just a couple of days. And then I got my job that I currently have at the minute, which I actually didn't get to begin with. And then they rang me back a few months later and said, well, are you still I've actually applied for another role at that company as a coordinator. And the head of production rang me and said, well, we don't want you for that. She said, we want you for the role that you originally applied for and didn't get initially. So now I'm doing that. And I am completely blown away in that, you know, I don't think of myself as a particularly switched on person or a particularly, you know, clever or anything like that. And to be given, and coming from Yorkshire and everything, to be given this opportunity to work in TV production with, you know, I work for, yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen and Andrew Newman, and I'm seeing celebrities, you know, a lot of the time they come into the office and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, you've got to try and keep calm and try and, it's amazing, and it's all luck, and it's all being a nice person, you know, making good relationships and making good connections with people, and then people, so like David, and then people are willing to help you. You know, David gave me so many opportunities and so much help, and that's just what you need to do. You need to be a nice person and keep pestering at the same time. But yeah, I'm sorry that was a bit of a waft. That was a bit of a raw. This is everything. But that was trying to be a quick go through of where I'm at the minute.
No, that was excellent, Jess. It was just so wonderful to hear. I made a few notes as you were speaking, some really good points. So I'm just going to emphasize them. And then if people have questions, can you please type them in the chat or raise your hands, and then we'll be able to take some questions. But I wanted to address one thing you said about being lucky. You are right. It is about luck, but I think even more important, it's about being prepared to be lucky. So you can have all the luck in the world. If you're not ready for it, then you miss the opportunity, and you were clearly prepared. So I'm saying that to say, don't underestimate, you know, your contribution to this, because you made these things happen too. And I think that goes for everyone who we tend to underestimate. You've talked very openly about underestimating yourself. We all do that. I ran a session on imposter syndrome yesterday. We're all guilty of that. And it really is having the confidence, being open to new opportunities. And like you said, networking, asking people. And like David said, you will trust your instincts. You will see the people who are not helpful and stay away from them. And you will see the people who are. Those are your allies. They will help you. And it's really interesting to think of the network from a contact in Aberdeen that has had impact in London for you. So the a lot of people think that being in Aberdeen is, it's remote from these things, but it's a whole network. And so use that network. And also one of the things I really liked was how you talked about your strengths, what you're good at. And you said some other things, you were like, well, I tried that and I wasn't good at it. And, and that's fine. We're not all good at everything, so that self-reflection is so important. And then also self-promotion. We're always afraid to promote ourselves. If we're talking about, and Rhoda knows this from doing I Am Remarkable sessions, if we're talking about something we've done, that's not bragging. That's just stating what we've done. That's a fact. I see we have a comment here. Let me get it, or a question. You seem to have tried out so many various roles in TV. Amazing. You mentioned applying for roles through Facebook. Could you elaborate on how you did that? Did you send a CV, or did you send a short cover letter via Messenger? And then a kind of related question, do you recommend joining groups on Facebook or over LinkedIn? Is Facebook better for networking?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't had much luck with LinkedIn. Yeah, but you know, a lot of people, especially in telly, like all the big wigs, they won't let you connect with them anyway because they've no idea who you are. I think the thing with Facebook, it's the pages, which for us, you know, there's quite a few. I need a production assistant in London, and you just join that, and then you post on there and keep posting, you know, keep doing. And as I say, this lady who got in contact with me literally just private messaged me and said, "Can you send me?" I've had that a few times actually, and them saying, so I wouldn't post and maybe put your CV on straight away because obviously that's your details and all that sort of thing. But I'd put yourself out there and say, if anyone wants to, you know, have my CV or has got anything or any work experience, anything like that, you know, let me know or drop me an email, and have a work-based email, and yeah, do it that way.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Any other questions for Jess? Or I don't know if David wanted to come in after commentary on Jess. He was nodding and thumbs upping.
So. Always supporting.
Yeah. Just lovely to hear how well she's done.
Absolutely, same. And I also wanted to say, I think, Jess, when you originally came to talk to me, you were thinking of doing a different degree. And I was like, well, why don't you do our film degree? And it was that kind of like, you know, being open to those opportunities. And for both of us, I think for me to say, hey, you know, why don't you come on our program? And for you to say, yeah, why not? You know, I'm just going to read what Rona has written. She's part of a Facebook group for starting out with runners who provide a lot of CV advice for entry roles. CVs are different to what you might use in the corporate world. So please talk to Rona about that. And Victoria's asked if that is that one called People in TV : Runners. I don't know. Rona can answer that. Any other questions for Jess or David? Or about TV in general, because we're going to kind of shift gears now, but really just listening to all these comments from Jess and David, these career tips apply in every field. Networking, asking questions, being open, being prepared to be lucky, knowing your strengths, self-promote. This applies absolutely to TV, but so many other industries. So for now, thank you, Jess. I mean, if you're able to stay on, great. You know, but if you have to go, no problem. And maybe we'll get more questions for you and David, because now we're going to switch gears a bit from TV. We're going to go to Anna Kerr, who is the Senior Private Secretary to the Minister of State for the Cabinet Office and Her Majesty's Treasury in the UK government, and graduated with an MA in French and International Relations. So we're shifting gears a little bit. And just to say, I had Anna last on the program, but because I think Anna also has to go, we're moving to Anna now. I hope that's okay with everyone. So Anna, are you here and able to turn your camera and mic on for us?
Yes, can everyone see and hear me?
Great, yes, we can see and hear you. Perfect, thank you.
Hi everyone, sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful in terms of a job title, so apologies in advance for you having to pronounce that. So I thought I'd kind of start with a little bit of basics as to what the civil service is and roughly what it does. Because to be fair, kind of like 6 years ago when I graduated, I had no idea. Like, it was not one of the options under my consideration. It was just kind of sort of something that existed, I think, separately from me. So kind of to start there, so the civil service delivers public services and supports the government of the day to develop and implement its policies. So the civil service in the UK is completely politically impartial. So we're not affiliated to any party, we just support whatever the government of the day is. And there are roughly 450,000 civil servants kind of spread across this country and abroad as well, so employed kind of in our foreign missions. And the work encompasses everything from advising ministers on policy to delivering frontline services. So kind of I'm a civil servant, I work at the center of government in the Cabinet Office and Treasury, but somebody kind of working for a job center delivering kind of like, you know, job advice, job coaching is also a civil servant. There are also civil servants, as I say, working kind of in, Lebanon and Paris and all over the world. So you could have a variety of different careers within the civil service. And there are also a lot of different professions. So I am what I call a glorified generalist. I studied international relations and French, had a lot of fun with it. I can't say that my current role is directly related to either of those things. But kind of like I've done a little bit of everything, and kind of my speciality is very quickly becoming the civil service itself. But there are also people kind of who are commercial specialists, people who work in digital and kind of have those sorts of skills, finance, HR, what have you. There are a lot of us. I also, in preparation for this, tried Googling examples of civil servants in popular culture, and then realized that I'm probably quite old. So these examples speak to me, but maybe nothing to you. So Terry Coverley, in the thick of it, is a civil servant. She's not a great example. I think kind of like she's sort of the butt of the joke a lot of the time. Or Sir Humphrey in Yes Minister, which is a great show. And now that I've worked for a minister, I can really appreciate what a great show it is. Or Arthur Weasley in Harry Potter is technically a civil servant, though a different kind. I maybe just showing my age with those examples. I don't know if they're like hip new shows now. That would be a better example. And now you can like move away from that like little lecture essentially. Oh, excellent. So I joined the civil service via the civil service fast stream, which is sort of, it's kind of branded a leadership scheme. It's essentially a graduate scheme. Though to be clear, I joined it not straight out of university, but kind of like 2 years after I graduated, having worked a little bit in public affairs. And this is kind of the moment where I mentioned that I tried joining the fast streams 3 times. So I was only successful in the 3rd attempt. So clearly kind of once I found out about it, I just kind of focused on it, and I just kept on kind of like banging on the door to kind of refer to what the previous speaker said. And then while on the fast stream, I did a few different rotations, because the whole point of the scheme is that kind of they put you in different departments doing different roles to give you kind of like a taste for it. And kind of the 2 I'd probably pull out as examples. I was at the Department for Exiting the EU, sort of just as Brexit was happening, or like it was beginning to happen, and it was great fun and also a bit terrifying, because we were essentially starting with like a blank page, completely blank page of paper saying, well, how do we actually set up like a whole governance around this? This is a new department. Like, how do we deliver this? How do we work with the rest of Whitehall to make it happen? And then Ministry of Justice, where I did a completely different role. And I actually worked within sort of their corporate function, leading a process of change where they were trying to kind of, they were essentially trying to make this finance function smaller, which was not fun for anyone involved. And I'm going to pull out that experience because I learned a lot about myself in that experience. And the key lesson for me was that corporate work is really not for me. So, kind of didn't really quite enjoy it at the time, but in retrospect, kind of like know a lot more about myself. So kind of now to bring us to where I am now, I then kind of like jumped off the fast stream a little bit earlier, got my first promotion, and spent 18 months working on the trade deal with kind of the EU and the US. So actually got to negotiate like a chapter within the agreement with the EU, which is now kind of published and online. And I think that's pretty cool. It's a very small chapter, don't get me wrong. Like it's a chapter that, nothing bad would probably happen if we didn't have that chapter within the trade agreement to fully own up to it. But it was fun getting to do that. And also the US. And unfortunately, COVID pandemic in that regard has really messed with my plans personally, because I was meant to be going to Washington as part of the kind of like negotiating team in March last year. And then the pandemic happened. So I do have to say that negotiating with the US over VTC is just not the same. It just isn't. And now kind of currently, so kind of almost a year ago now, I switched jobs. And I work in the private office of a Lord's Minister, as he's kind of senior private secretary. In case kind of you don't quite know what it means, because again, like I don't think anyone does. My mom, I still thinks that I make tea, which I do sometimes do. To be clear, it's kind of somebody once described private office to me as 50% kind of at pace decision making and 50% high stakes admin. And I still think it's a very apt description. So I think in that regard, it may be a little bit similar to what Jess was describing as her job, even though I know nothing about kind of like TV, to be honest. It's a lot of kind of coordination and making sure the minister has kind of like the right advice, the right papers, and that like you're delivering his priorities, whatever his priorities kind of the day are. So my minister is a joint minister. So he sits over two departments, so Treasury and Cabinet Office. And both of those departments are kind of central departments. So they're not that big in terms of numbers, but they kind of, set direction for the rest of the civil service. And within that, my minister is responsible for transformation and efficiency, which is super opaque. We're kind of like still defining what it means, to be honest. And it does mean that it kind of like encompasses almost everything, or whatever kind of like he feels it should encompass. And one of the examples that I will bring out of this, because I think it's quite relevant, is he's responsible for moving civil servants out of London. So one of the big kind of commitments of this government is to make the civil service less London-centric. So currently, most of the senior civil service roles, for example, 68% of them are based in Whitehall. So it's kind of quite hard to have a career outside of London within the civil service, and possible but difficult. So this government is trying to kind of move more roles, and especially senior civil service roles, outside of London. And very recently, last week, actually, Cabinet Office made an announcement about moving currently only 500 staff, but hopefully more in the future, to Glasgow. And I think kind of quite a lot of departments are doing that, and that's very positive, because one day I'd actually quite love to come back to Scotland myself. So that's something he's responsible for. So I'm going to kind of end there in terms of my very kind of like brief whistle-stop tour of my career to date. Oh, Rhonda, do you have to answer this now? This is quite hard to answer.
Yeah, I would. That's great. Thank you. Firstly, thank you so much, Anna. But yes, I love that question. What is a typical day for you? I know there's probably no typical day, but you could select a few choice moments. That would be great. Yeah.
Definitely I can. And yeah, I do think that no typical day is a bit of a lazy answer, but it's also sort of true most of the day. So I'll just take you through. So we do like a hybrid of working from home and working from the office currently. So as you can see, kind of today I'm in the office. This is not what my living room looks like. And so kind of when I'm in the office, normally I will start quite early. So I'll come into work at 7:30 on not every day, but kind of on the kind of some in office days, and prepare kind of something we call the day pack for the minister for the day. So that's literally kind of like he will have like 6 to 10 meetings a day. So we'll have an agenda kind of in papers for each of those meetings. So that's quite like admin-y. We'll put this kind of like in a folder, make sure he has that to hand. And then kind of we'll start. So a few of those meetings, so at least kind of 2 or 3 will be my meetings, as in I will attend them with the minister as the responsible private secretary. I'll take a note of the meeting, kind of try and understand what decisions need to be made. And then kind of like everything, really the job is kind of like everything else that happens in the middle. Like, I'll come in and the minister will be particularly like worried about one thing, like currently he's worried that maybe Home Office is not moving kind of like enough people, not as many people as he'd like outside of London. And he'll ask me kind of, how do we make sure it happens? And like, what do you think we should do? And then we'll kind of like problem solve together and try and kind of like understand who we need to talk to, which ministers he should kind of like get involved with. Should he text them privately or politically, or should he have a meeting? Kind of like, how do we address that? So it's kind of like a mixture of, I think, kind of quite admin things in terms of, making sure that he has all the right papers, making sure that the meeting minutes go out and so on, and kind of more problem solving, exciting stuff. And I also manage a team, that is worth being said. So I manage 4 people. So it's also kind of making sure that they are all supporting the minister in a way that makes sense, and that like they are supporting themselves. And so on. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, great. That's very interesting. Sounds like a real mixed bag. A few questions have come through for you. So the first one, and it was related to something I was going to ask. So Katie has asked, even though you aren't using your French degree, whoops, the chat moved. Even though you aren't using your French degree in your role, do you think your language skills have helped your career? And then I would add to that, could you comment on some of the things that you got from your degrees that you are using in your career? So first the question about French and did it help your career, but then what other skills did you get from your degree that you now use in your career?
Very good question. So yes, French did help actually, and especially in one of my roles in particular. So as I said, one of the roles I did was negotiating with the EU and the US. And as part of that, I was kind of a part of the UK kind of delegation to the EU while we were still part of the EU. And I went to a few events there. Now, this kind of like the language spoken was actually English. You know, you don't need to speak any other languages. But I'd say it was helpful to be able to speak French with kind of Belgian and French counterparts on the sidelines. I think it also kind of breaks up the image that, you know, British don't bother learning languages. I mean, it's also, you can tell from my accent that I'm not actually born in Britain. I'm actually from Latvia myself. So that in itself was quite surprising to people. They were like, oh, so you can work for the UK civil service without kind of like necessarily being British born, British bred, which at the time was true. I think it may not be kind of after Brexit anymore, or it's kind of starting in January, unfortunately, but kind of there we go. And then, yeah, kind of being able to have those conversations definitely helps. And in terms of skills that I learned as part of my degree that I kind of like get to use. So I think most of it is just, so I think being able to write really well is, I mean, it's kind of like a really undervalued, I think, skill often, but an incredibly important one, especially if you want like an exciting kind of like career and you want to work at the higher kind of like levels of the civil service, or you want to be at the center where things are happening. Ability to communicate well and clearly, and also to just like understand complex problems and arguments, kind of like seeing them for the first time, especially in a ministerial office. Something will quite often kind of like hit my desk, and I've had really no prior exposure to it. Like it's something about procurement or contracts, and now it's my problem because it's kind of like blowing up a little bit and we need to solve it. And I have like, you know, quite often it's almost like an assessment center exercise. You know, I have like 10 minutes to get my head around this super long briefing and trying to like figure out how do I advise my minister, what do I think we should do about it. So definitely kind of like a lot of those kind of like basic skills that you don't even realize you're learning while you're at university help massively once you move forward.
Thank you so much for saying that, Anna. For all the students out there listening, this is why we are constantly asking you to write essays and participate in class discussions. These skills are essential in the workforce, no matter what you do, but you know, definitely for what Anna has described. So thank you for saying that. The next two questions are kind of related. It's about the fast stream application. One, Holly's asking what it was like, and then Annie has asked, you said you applied to it 3 times. What do you think you did differently the final time that led to you being accepted?
So on that, I think my answer would not be super helpful. I didn't care whether I was successful or not the 3rd time. And I think that definitely helped. I got to the assessment center the 3rd time as well, and I was just a lot more relaxed about it. I was already doing something in public affairs, and at that point, I kind of had the choice between getting promoted within public affairs or making a sideways move, i.e. not getting more money, just getting kind of like the same amount of money, but kind of moving into the civil service. And I was quite equally, I don't know, excited about both options. So I was like, I'm just going to give the civil service fast stream one last try. And you know what, if I don't get it, it's fine. Like I can see myself having a fun career anyway. So I think that really helped. And I remember being in the assessment center with this this woman who was fresh out of uni. And I remember thinking how different we felt. She was so anxious. I mean, bless her, she was literally like struggling to breathe and had to take a moment and then had to drink loads of water. And she was like, this is like the thing for me. And I was like, having done this for the past 2 years and having applied for like 200 jobs and got rejected from all of them straight out of the uni, I was like, you know, it's fine. If you don't get this one, there's so many other opportunities. And I think that really helped. It relaxed me and just let me be my natural self. I know it's not super helpful to people. I'm really sorry for that, but it really does help if you just let it go a little bit.
I think it's the best advice, really, and it's maybe something that you kind of have to learn by doing. It was the same for me with this job. I applied for about 80 jobs, and I didn't get them when I finished my PhD. And by the time I got to this job interview, I had decided, well, I'll just move back to the States and look for a job there. This was the last job I applied for in the UK and Europe. And I was so relaxed because I was like, well, I'm going home anyway. And then I got it. So it is actually good advice. There's a student asking about about degrees and advice for a career in politics. There's a student who's doing psychology and sociology and wondering if it would be better to keep one or the other, and another student asking just general advice about a career in politics.
So on degrees, Rona is actually right. It doesn't matter. It kind of depends which of the fast streams you apply for. So there are definitely kind of different fast stream schemes. And as Ron said, there are some kind of specialized ones. So there is the government social research one. And I think there is an analysis fast stream as well, which works a little bit differently, and the commercial one. All of those require like essentially STEM subjects. So you need to have a degree in a STEM subject. The one I did, which is a generalist fast stream, which I think now has been renamed policy fast stream to make it sound fancier. So that one does not require, it requires a degree. I think any degree at 2-2 level, it's pretty low in terms of requirements. And it doesn't matter kind of what that degree is really. But also kind of I would be wrong to not point out that the fast stream is not the only way to get into the civil service. I'll share with you the link to kind of like the civil service jobs website as well. So you can apply to the civil service directly. You don't need to go through the fast stream, and you can kind of work your way up. Once you get in, like on the inside, the opportunities are endless because most of the jobs never go out for external recruitment. They're only kind of like go out for internal recruitment, but it's very easy to move between different departments. So you can kind of like keep on applying for jobs and kind of feel like you've had so many different jobs, but fundamentally kind of like stay within roughly the same institution, so to say. It's a little bit like jargon heavy. So I would actually kind of like welcome if ever you do decide to apply for a civil service role, please do get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and kind of like if you want to have a chat about it or about kind of what all of these competencies or all of that strength or whatever actually mean and how do you go about applying. I can't promise that I will like read your job application for you, but I can kind of like give you a general, kind of impression of what they mean and what we're looking for in the civil service.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to take 2 more questions because then I do want to move on to our next speaker. I'm glad there's a lot of interest in this, but just so that we have time for our last, for Grace as well. So Joanna has asked, what do you think has changed in terms of looking for jobs in politics with regard to coronavirus? You touched on that a bit. And then Rona was asking, what is the best entry-level job title for an MA student for civil service jobs from the government website?
Okay, so on the best entry-level job title, I'd say you'd ideally want to go for higher executive officer, so that's HEO. But because, again, of all the jargon and how kind of like tricky it sometimes it is, you'd probably have better chance of succeeding at applying for EO, executive officer. That's a more junior job, and you may end up kind of like doing quite admin heavy things. But personally, I spent the 6 months kind of my career straight after uni, essentially doing admin. So you just kind of got to embrace it and trust that, if you're bright and ambitious and you try very hard and work very hard, people will notice that kind of, you are a great candidate to be promoted. So yeah, executive officer may be an easier one to apply for straight out of uni if you have no other work experience. And in terms of looking for jobs during the pandemic, I mean, I think the key thing that I've personally found very difficult is just kind of networking opportunities are really reduced now. Or I think it's taken me a while to understand how to network in the digital world, and it can feel even more awkward, especially kind of like for me. So like I am not that supernatural. I'm not. I mean, I'm obviously not supernatural. I am not really natural at networking. I think I find it quite awkward. I find it a lot easier if it's like, a function or an event, and then you're having a conversation in the margins of like a professional discussion. But just kind of like messaging someone and actually saying, hey, can you grab a coffee with me? I found you kind of like, inspiring, impressive, whatever. Can we have a chat about your career? It's just that bit more awkward for me. And I think it is for a lot of people. But you do have to do it in a way. And even kind of like, it's almost like you have to do it more the more senior you get, because then it's a lot more about your networks and about kind of like who you know, and you want to kind of like pick the next job, correctly. So yeah, I found that forward, I'd say.
Yeah. No, I think that is the same for everyone. And I think in many ways, sometimes that's how social media can help, or if there are events happening, online lectures. I don't know if that applies in your field, but, being able to go to those and ask questions, I think people need to just look for whatever opportunities they can get. So thank you so much, Anna. By the way, I didn't know that you were from Latvia. I wanted to say paldies and sveiki. I lived in Latvia for 5 years before moving here. I couldn't tell because your surname. It's so nice to have that connection.
What a small world.
Yeah, I know. I'm not Latvian. I just lived there. I was doing research. That's another story. But thank you. If you're able to stick around in the chat, and if there are questions, that's great. If not, thank you so much for coming. And then we're going to move over to our next speaker. Last but certainly not least, Grace Balfour Harley, editorial assistant at the Beano, DC Thompson, who graduated with an MA in English and legal studies. So Grace, are you here and able to turn on your microphone and camera?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, I see you and hear you. Thank you.
Okie dokes. Hi, I'm Grace. I don't have too much of a career story to explain at the moment because I'm in my first job since graduating. But I do have. This doesn't mean that I haven't done stuff since I graduated, because it's been 4 or 5 years since then. I can't believe that. But yeah, after I graduated from Aberdeen, I always sort of knew I maybe wanted to go into publishing and magazines and things. So I decided to go and do a master's at Edinburgh Napier in publishing. Somebody that I'd done work experiences with had recommended Napier as a good place to go. And so I thought, do you know what, it'll give me a good basis for understanding the publishing industry, which can sometimes to an outsider seem very mysterious. And I want to say, to me, it always seemed quite magical, but that might have just been because I grew up with 90s rom-coms where everybody worked as an editor. I mean, check it out, they all work as editors, which it's completely different. It's completely different actually working there. So I am the editorial assistant at the Beano. For anybody who doesn't know, the Beano is was created in Dundee, and it's still there today. That's where I'm based. And it is the world's longest running weekly children's comic. Holds a Guinness World Record for that. And it's now 82 years old. So it's been going for a very, very long time, over 4,000 issues. And I help to make it every week, which is really, really exciting and really fun. We deal I deal with characters and looking after characters and editing scripts to make sure that they're funny enough, because Beano is all about fun and silliness. So they've got to be funny, they've got to be appropriate for our readers. Sometimes you can just go, it's maybe not quite working, and try and work out a way to change it up. But yeah, so I've done. What else have I done? 2020, ironically, was quite a good year for me, although the world is burning. I won a Rising Star Award, so I got loads of money to go and do extra training courses and things like that. If you are interested in publishing, that is definitely something to have a look at, because for particularly young people, because they can put money towards short training courses that you're doing, if you need equipment to be able to get into it. But yeah, they're really, really useful, just because it's taking away that sort of publishing. As I said, it seems quite mysterious and unknown, and people then don't know, because they don't know about it, they don't go into it, which everyone should try. Like if you're interested in books or magazines or writing, that's the kind of thing to look at. Even if you're into like marketing, people need to market books and magazines. So get interested in Twitter, get interested in Facebook, and how publishers and companies use it to get their products out there, because that's what they're trying to do at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm also the general member of the SYP, and we have a conference on Friday. I'm sorry, I need to plug this, but it's so useful if you are interested in publishing, because we're going to speak about lots and lots of things that are going on in the publishing industry that are affecting young people in the publishing industry, but also as a whole, which obviously it's had a massive, last year's had a massive change in everything that has happened So I would get your tickets soon for that, because it's a real deep dive into publishing, and hopefully will help if anyone's interested in that kind of industry. We do have networking sessions that are associated with that, so you can get chatting, you can do one-on-one things and ask people questions and find out about it. And that's publishing, it's the same with film, it's the same with lots and lots of careers, particularly creative. It's not necessarily about who you know, but it never hurts. No, it absolutely never hurts to know, to know more people, because they'll be able to, even if they can't get you a job, you're not going to get it that way. That's because we're trying to reduce that kind of looking, but people can let you know that they've heard about an opportunity that's coming up, and you can get chatting with people and find out a bit more about the publishing industry, and that's always just helpful. I've made so many good friends throughout it, and that's how you can, even if you just want to complain about something you've been asked to do, that kind of thing, it's always good to have people who know what you're talking about. But yeah, so joining the SYP is definitely something to try to come along to the conference. You don't have to be a member to come to the conference, so don't worry about that. But we put on monthly events, we run mentorship schemes and all that kind of things that will help. The Society of Young Publishers is a organization that wants to help build young publishers, people who are early in their career. Fresh graduates are a massive part of our membership, and so we have huge numbers of people who want to become publishers or want to work in the publishing industry in whatever way they desire. A piece of advice for you guys is just to do a bit of research into it, because while yes, obviously the main thing when people think of publishing is editing, that is not the only job that is available. And because everybody knows about editing, it is the most competitive, which makes it hard. I hate to say this, as somebody who's been there and done that at the moment, it's so difficult to get. You're getting thousands and thousands of applications for jobs, for editing jobs. But if you say maybe you find that editing's not quite your thing, but you're really into design, or you're really into, as I said, marketing. If you have a legal background, publishers sell rights. That's how they make a lot of money. Film rights, TV rights, anything else they've had. They buy rights from other countries and things like that, other territories, to then print the book in another language or get it translated. There's so many different kinds of roles to look at. Look into them, because there's production. Again, if you're really, really good with dates and working out making sure that things get to where they're supposed to get to. If you're the one organizing all of your friends' outings, have a look at that, because that's the sort of thing you'll be able to do with production. So there's so many different types of roles. I'm not saying don't try and get into editorial, but have a look and find out what else there is, because there's far more things to do in publishing than just editing the book. And as I always say, an editor doesn't make a book. The production department doesn't make a book. The sales department doesn't just make a book. It's the whole publishing company coming together and going through all the different processes that gets a book into the shops. So when I say get into the shops, booksellers are part of the publishing industry too. So if you just like chatting to people about books, have a look at working in a bookshop, running events there, because a lot of publishers will run, before COVID, they ran in-person launch events with their authors. So that's really great, because then you get to know authors, you get to know the different publishers there are. So yes, that's a really good thing to do. So if you're looking for a part-time job, that's something to look at as well, if you're wanting to build experience without maybe necessarily working for free. But yeah, I think that that's all I sort of have to say. I'm happy to sort of answer questions and things at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. That was just excellent, and it's so interesting to hear. I mean, I was really glad that you said about doing research, because you're right. Most of what I know about publishing comes from, oh, I don't know, Bridget Jones, you know, like that's what it is. And you're so right. There are all these other things, and it is hard when you're presented with these views from the media. But if this is where you want to work, whatever field it is, you have to do your research, and you have to talk to people and Google things and look on social media. You know, you do have to do the work. So thank you for saying that. And the other great thing you mentioned was this conference, and every discipline has a conference. You know, every discipline has a professional body, and getting involved in that is a really great way to network and to meet people. So we do have some questions for you. The first question is an interesting one. I wasn't expecting it. It's more of a content question with regard to the Beano. It's from John. How do you respect the lineage and heritage of the nearly 100-year-old Beano brand while trying to appeal to new young readers?
Well, we acknowledge that we have, obviously, that last week Dennis has been in, it was Dennis's birthday. He turned 10 for the 70th time. So he's been in the Beano for 70 years. But if you look at it, we did something that was really interesting, which is we looked at Dennis from when he first appeared to then consider like moving on to where Dennis is now. And he is completely different. The drawing style has changed, the writing style has changed. What Dennis does has changed as well. We're very much forward looking rather than, yes, we do have that heritage, and we do use that. We pull back on that and speak about it. But actually, that's the reason that we're still here, is because we've kept appealing to the current audience. There's no point in going, we'll keep like talking to the 40-year-old adults who read it when they were a kid, when actually what you're doing is creating content for children. It's always reader first. So while, yes, we do acknowledge that we do have this massive like brand and brand and lineage and heritage behind it, you don't always need to acknowledge that in order to keep something going, because you need to keep developing, you need to keep changing, because that's what the times do. And the kids need to, the readers need to connect with them. Recently, we actually introduced some new characters to try and create another development within. We've added new characters to the lineup to make sure that we're moving with the times. We're representing what the children and our readers are seeing in their daily life, to make sure that it's not, yes, that it's continually changing and updating, because as I said, you can't, unless you're appealing to your actual readership, you're not going to sell magazines. Unfortunately, not every 40-year-old dad is going to buy Beano. Not every sort of, but because we have this heritage, people remember reading it and love it, they're more likely to buy it for their children. So that's the sort of, you can pull on that nostalgia, but you also it has to be reader first, rather than always harking back to what we used to do.
Thank you so much for that. It's great to hear you saying that, because that's one of the things I'm always saying to students is, who is the target audience of this project or this essay or this or that? And I'm glad to hear you say reader first. Yeah.
That is the key for any kind of sort of book any kind of publishing, whether you're marketing it to someone, who is supposed to be getting this? Who are you trying to either sell it to, but also what would they want to know? What would they need to know? It's something that I sort of speak to if I'm speaking to students and wanting to go into editorial. Always, that whenever you're editing something, think about the reader, think about who's going to be reading this, what are their needs, and then you make sure that you're getting in their needs. It's the same when you're writing a cover letter. This is the key to cover letters. Think about the people who are reading it. If they're reading loads and loads of applications, make it as easy as possible, that kind of thing, because they want to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thank you. We have a few more questions for you. So Ida has asked, do you have any recommendations for acquiring experience in publishing while still at university, or any tips where to look for or how to get into entry-level jobs? And that kind of relates to another question by Judith, if Bino has summer internships or career insight days.
Bino, we haven't. I've been there for 2 years now. Obvious, two and a half years now. We haven't done a summer internship or a career insight day for a while. Obviously, at the moment, it's incredibly difficult. We're working from home. We're not in the office. But DC Thompson, if you want to try and get some work experience, there's no harm in emailing DC Thompson. Shout often do summer internships, which is another one of our magazines. But don't just look at DC Thompson, because there are plenty of other magazines based in Scotland that would happily take on people. I've done plenty of placements. I did one at Connect Communications, which is a contract magazine publisher. I've done stuff at Deco Comics, which is an independent comic for kids with dyslexia. I did some at Foodies magazine, which is based in Edinburgh. They run the Foodies Festival, which goes all around the UK, but they also have a magazine that attaches to that. And if you're wanting to know about things to do that you could do while you're at university, you all know that there's the Gaudi, the student newspaper. I was an editor on there. I wrote the entire 4 years I was there. Get involved with them. They're always happy to have new writers and new voices. I promise you that, and it's really helpful to show that you've gotten involved in you've got this opportunity to get involved in something, and then you're showing that you're passionate about it because you've gotten involved before you have to try and get a job. You've built up experience while it's still possible. I learned how to use InDesign. I learned how to sort of write and edit things to make them a publishable standard, sub-edit to get them down to the right words, those kinds of things. Oh yes, the Gaudi AGM is next Tuesday at 4, according to the chat. So go along to that. It's really good fun, and I had some great weekends spent on press days, design weeks there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I saw that they're looking for writers, so absolutely. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm going backward in the chat, and that's only because I missed this question. It wasn't intentional, so apologies, Morag. The question from Morag is, do you know if being dyslexic would affect my chances of getting jobs within the publishing sector?
It depends on what you want to do. I will always say that. It may make it more difficult if you want to do editorial or copywriting, but it is not necessarily impossible. One of our best writers at Bino is dyslexic. He doesn't write his scripts in our traditional manner, which is on a Word document, a bit like a film script. If I explain this. Our scripts come in and they're like film scripts. So there's a description of what's happening in this panel. A panel is just a box for the on the page, and there's a description of who's on the page, what they're doing, what's going on in the background, if that's relevant, that kind of thing, where it's set, and then who's speaking and what they're saying, and then it does that for every panel for the entire story. Nigel Ochterlone, he actually storyboards it, so he draws it out like a visually like a storyboard, draws it out so we can see physically what is happening, and that actually helps. That's much better for him because he's dyslexic, and typing it out would be harder work for him, whereas actually we want to get the writing out of him, and we can edit it to fix all the grammar and things. I will say if you're doing anything that's copywriting, editing, it might be more difficult, but actually I don't see in any other roles where it would be a huge barrier for you. You just have to be able to prove that even though you are dyslexic, you have methods of combating that if that's a problem for you. Particularly for editorial, I think that's a tough one because so much of it is grammar and spelling and punctuation based. So you've got to be able to know all of that inside and out. But I don't think it has any other barrier for wanting to get into publishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. A few more questions have come in. Do you think it's possible to get a job in publishing without a postgrad degree? And also, is it possible to enter the publishing industry without necessarily being in Scotland or the UK? It's kind of related questions.
I think I would. I cannot say that I didn't get my job that I'm currently in without my postgrad. I cannot say that, but I don't think it should be required for people to have publishing postgrads, because that limits the number of people that can come into the industry because of financial barriers, because postgrads cost a lot of money, but also time. People may not be able to have the time to go and do a postgrad. They may need to make money and go out and get a job. And that, I think, I would not like to think that the publishing industry, I don't think it should be a requirement to have a postgraduate in publishing to get into publishing, because that's going to limit our pool of amazing people that could come and completely shake up the publishing industry. I don't know if that's the way hiring trends are going, though, unfortunately, because it's such an oversaturated, there's so many people applying for jobs, and having a publishing degree is an easy way for them to filter out people. And I don't want to be not supportive or sort of encouraging on that fact, but that is the way I see it going. More people are getting jobs who have publishing degrees, which makes it harder for anybody who doesn't. But I don't think that should stop you, because passion and enthusiasm and experience is the most important thing you can have. You can learn everything else on the job. I guarantee that I'm still learning plenty of things in my job, and I've been there 2 years now. So.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. And I should say that, you know, we don't have a degree in publishing at the University of Aberdeen, but we do have English postgrads, and we do have this opportunity to do work-based placements. So it could be possible to do something in publishing or publishing related. So that's just a promo for our postgrad programs here. Judith has a question. I've heard from various sources that the publishing industry's strongest social media channel is Twitter. Do you agree? Do you have favorite Twitter accounts you would recommend to follow? Do you see it being important for magazines as much as it seems to be for book publishing? Good question.
Yes, Twitter is pretty much where the publishing industry goes to chat with everyone else and find out about the news that's happening in the industry. That's something that was one of the requirements on my course, is that you had to set up a Twitter account and get tweeting, get chatting to people, follow people, build up your following behind that. So I agree with that. And do I have favorite Twitter accounts I would recommend to follow? Oh goodness, there are so many. I'm just going to have a quick search, because I have a list somewhere on my Twitter of good publishing accounts to follow. SYP is a really great one to follow, because one, we'll connect you with lots and lots of speakers and things. We always connect whenever we run events. The speakers that are speaking with, we always connect with them and tweet and add them on our tweets. So therefore, you can easily see where all the different people we're speaking about. But some of the ones I would recommend following that actually are really helpful for career development and publishing knowledge. And I'm just going to double check their names. One is Kiara. She's got a YouTube channel all about your career development and side hustles in publishing. And the other is Eleanor Rose. Again, she's just started her YouTube channel, and she's doing lots and lots of videos of interviews of people in publishing, but also things you need to know to be in publishing, like all the different sort of jargon that they have. She had a couple of videos on all the terms you need to know to be in publishing, those kinds of things. Yeah, I can type them out if that's helpful. Kiara and Eleanor. That helps. If you search them, you should be able to work out which ones they are from publishing. And yeah, it's equally as important to be on Twitter as magazines as it is for book publishing. I connect with follow a lot of magazines. That's how I find out what their front covers are, look at what they're doing, all the different things that they're doing. Those are the kinds of things to follow. Actually, if you want to know how important Twitter is for publishing, we have 2 networking sessions at the conference. One is a one-to-one Zoom, not Zoom, video video evening, and the other is a Twitter networking session. For anyone who's a bit camera shy, doesn't really want to chat one-on-one, like maybe that makes them a bit nervous, we're doing a Twitter SYP chat, is what we call it, #SYP chat. That's how important Twitter is and how often it's used with publishing industries professionals. And we've got a lot of our professionals are getting involved that way rather than necessarily being able to get involved face to face. Same with the attendees.
That's really great to know, because that means that anyone can just go follow that hashtag and be engaged. You know, maybe if you're a little shy and you don't want to pitch in, you can see how the conversation goes. And Rona has asked a question on that note, whether you have a separate personal and professional Twitter profile, and if you recommend that.
I will say I don't, but I sort of wish I did. I set up my Twitter account years ago, and then when I got told I had to have one for my publishing degree, I thought, I'm not bothered setting up another one. I'll just remember the login details for that one and go back to it. So I've had that sort of, because I'd already developed sort of a bit of a Twitter following on there when I used it. So I was just building on that, made it a bit easier. But if you're starting out now and you want to sort of have your professional one and a personal one, do it. I think that's probably a good thing. It keeps things separate. But be aware that employers will look at both of them. If they can find both of them, they'll look at both of them. So be aware of that. Don't use your personal one unprofessionally, even though it's not your professional one.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I mean, the way I keep mine separate is that my Facebook is my personal stuff. It has my friends. It has very high profile settings. My Twitter is public. I don't post anything there that I wouldn't want the entire world to see.
That's a similar thing that I think I do. My Facebook is sort of more private, personal stuff, and Twitter is where I speak about other, professional things. Yeah,
and it is true that employers will look you up. They will absolutely Google you. So make sure you do an inventory of what's out there.
It's good to know. After my interview for Beano, the editor followed me on Twitter, and I knew that he'd looked me up. So therefore, watch out. They do. It's totally true.
Yeah. And also be careful with that too. Like if you're applying for a job, maybe don't click to follow someone. You can still look at their Twitter without actually following them, because you don't want to influence or something. So I think being attentive to social media is really, really important. We have time for some more questions, if there are any, for Grace or just in general about employment. This has been really fascinating for me, because I had always had this idea that publishing was really, like you said, it's kind of mysterious and it seems really hard to get into. And it's so nice to hear that there are so many opportunities out there, that it's not a closed door profession.
I will say that is one thing that publishing can it really does seem that it is a closed door profession. But as I said, if you get on Twitter and speak to publishing individuals there, you'll discover that we're all the loveliest people ever. We're all very friendly. We love to chat to one another, tell each other what books we've been reading, and that we really enjoyed this thing that they've done because of their work, that kind of thing. We're all very, very lovely and supportive of young publishers. If it's helpful, I can put together some resources for anybody who's interested in publishing. I have a few other things that are other resources that people may want to follow on Twitter, sign up for different newsletters and things, but it's easier if I write them out and put links to them. So I can send that to Rona and she can send them out to people if they're interested.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much. We have one last question. We can end on this, and I think it's a good one to end with. Dora has asked, how long would you say it takes to go from an entry position in publishing to a good, stable, fulfilling position? I know it's a tough question to answer, but just from what you've seen, maybe.
It really depends. It takes a bit longer in Scotland because there are fewer. It's a smaller industry in Scotland than it is maybe in London. But I will. My job while it is entry level, it is stable and it is fulfilling. So there's no my entry level job, I get to do an awful lot of things. So I'm just clarifying that actually entry level is where you learn everything. You learn all about all the different departments. So it's a lot and it's a lot of learning, but it's yeah, the further up you go, sometimes the less involved in the creative side you are. Particularly in magazines, you get more involved in the business side. That's where it comes from. So if you're wanting creative, actually staying in entry level, mid-level positions are useful. But it's hard to say because it depends on the company that you're in. It depends on what quite a lot of people I know who have maybe career changed will move further up the you'll move further up the sort of ladder quickly because you have job experience. Whereas maybe somebody starting out, it will take a bit longer because you're still building up your work experience. I'm still in my first position after graduating. I'm going to turn 26 in April, so I'm still developing. I'm still learning. But actually, the more you get involved with things, the more you get involved, be passionate, ask questions, go along to things, chat to people. Sometimes the easier it is to develop up. But actually, once you get your foot in the door, it gets a bit easier to be able to do that. So yeah, the answer is I don't know. There is no set limit, unfortunately. But also, in the nicest way, if you're entering and you're in your 20s, we've got loads of time. Got loads and loads of time. You don't need to have it all sorted by the time you're 30. Don't worry about that. So yeah, just take your time, develop as you need to, learn when you need to, and don't worry about it because yeah, I know publishing, they're not well paid, but you've still got lots of time, and actually you're able to do things. It's not as bad as you think it will be.
That's great. That's so great that you said that, Grace, because I think we have this perception of entry-level jobs that are, grunt work and they're not fulfilling. But Jess said the same thing. She was running around on set getting coffee for people, but she loved it. She was in the middle. I know Jess has left, but she was in the middle of all the action. And don't underestimate what you will learn in those entry-level positions. And don't rush
it. Don't try and rush it, because that's what you can't change the learning that you'll get from it, because if you don't have that basis, sometimes it gets harder further on. Just that's sort of what I would say. Yeah, and personally, I look back to the earlier days of my career when I had less responsibility. I look back longingly. So, don't be too eager to climb that ladder, as you said. I think that's true in a lot of industries. The higher you get to the top, the less creative and the more managerial and, meetings and finances. And it does, like for me, I do less teaching and research now that I'm, at a higher position. So it's so true. Don't rush it. If you're making ends meet and you're doing what you love, just go with it. And you never know what will happen from that. So thank you. So I'm just going to say that Julia has asked if you've logged in with just your first name, can you please send through your student ID number? Not so much to keep attendance, but just to be able to email you after with this information that Grace has offered to provide. I will also edit the video down and subtitle it and circulate that to everyone. So that you can, have it as a reference in future. I know that Jess and Anna and David have all left, and Grace is our last person standing. Thank you so much for staying with us. But I just wanted to thank all the speakers, and especially Rona and Careers Services for helping put this together and organizing it and being on hand with the organization and everything. And thank you to all the students who came and participated. Your questions have been fantastic. So the message from today, I think, is, there are jobs out there. There, even in difficult industries, there's possibilities, and you just have to reach out and grab them. And I hope this will be some good inspiration for you to do that. I don't know if you wanted to say any closing words, Rona. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, caught you off guard.
I swear I'm going to get a mug saying I'm muted. Honestly, it happens every time. I just wanted to say a huge thank you as well to our speakers, and just to pick up on something that both Grace and Amy have said. I had a brilliant day 2 years ago now, maybe it was 3. I went out to the Beech Grove Garden and I spent a day with Jess and I watched her do her job, and it was so that I could get an understanding as a careers advisor of what careers, entry-level careers in TV are like. She worked so hard with a smile on her face. Can you go and get me a plate with a knife? Can you go and get me a tomato? You know, sure, no problem. And I think that's a really key thing for these kind of entry level coming into the professions, is to be the person that smiles and say, yes, of course I can do that, because that's a really important message to send to the people up the chain to show that you're totally on it. And I think that's probably, I'm sure, the same for life in the Beano. I randomly had a job, Grace knows this, I had a job with the Beano when I was a student. I got to sellotape free gifts onto their magazines. It's one of the most stressful things I've done because I'm left-handed and they gave me a right-handed sellotape dispenser. Yeah, so but it's really good to get an insight there into the different things. So a huge thank you to Amy as well. But yeah, what a great session. Thank you so much to everybody. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
I'll stay on for a minute to try and catch all these ID numbers that are flying through so that we can mark you attended as well. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. I'm stopping the recording now. Bye.